What would you do if you discovered your wedding dress being modeled by your husband's mistress on TikTok for tech CEO Sophia Sterling? That viral moment was just the beginning of a nightmare that would cost her everything: her marriage, her company, and her dignity. But when they tried to auction off her most precious possession to the highest bidder, turning her heartbreak into entertainment for millions, Sophia realized she had two choices: disappear forever, or fight back with everything she had left. This is the story of how one woman's most humiliating moment became her greatest triumph, and why sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover who you really are. Sophia Sterling was in the middle of presenting her quarterly projections to Goldman Sachs when her phone exploded with notifications. The conference room held 12 of Wall Street's most powerful investors, men in $1,000 suits who controlled billions in venture capital. She had worked 3 years to get this meeting, 3 years to convince them that her artificial intelligence platform could revolutionize financial forecasting. As you can see from slide 7, Sophia continued, her voice steady despite the constant buzzing from her purse, our predictive accuracy has increased by 43% since last quarter. James Morrison, the lead partner, glanced at his own phone and frowned. Then another investor checked his device. Within seconds, half the room was staring at their screens instead of her presentation. Miss Sterling, Morrison interrupted, his tone suddenly cold. Perhaps you should check your messages. Sophia's stomach dropped. She had built her reputation on being unshakable, the foster kid from Detroit who had clawed her way to Silicon Valley success. At 34, she was the youngest woman to ever address Goldman's investment committee. She couldn't afford to show weakness now. I prefer to focus on the matter at hand, she replied, advancing to the next slide. Morrison's assistant whispered something in his ear. His expression shifted from professional to uncomfortable. Mrs. Sterling, I think you really need to see this. The way he said her married name made her blood freeze. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and opened TikTok. The first video had 15 million views, and counting. A young woman with platinum blonde hair and perfect makeup was modeling Sophia's wedding dress. The Vera Wang gown that had cost $50,000, the dress she had worn during the happiest day of her life. The woman spun in front of a full-length mirror, the silk flowing around her like liquid moonlight. The caption read, "When Bay's wife has better taste than him. Thanks for sharing the closet. Sis. #shared closet. #wifey upgrade." Sophia's vision blurred. She recognized the bedroom in the background. It was her bedroom, in the penthouse she shared with her husband Marcus. The same bedroom where she had gotten ready for their wedding 3 years ago, where her foster mother's pearls had been clasped around her neck for the last time before cancer took her. "I apologize, gentlemen," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to reschedule." Morrison was already standing. "I think that would be best. We'll be in touch." But Sophia knew they wouldn't be. As she gathered her presentation materials with shaking hands, she could hear them murmuring among themselves, words like scandal and liability and due diligence floated through the air like poison. She walked out of Goldman Sachs knowing she had just lost $50 million in funding. But that seemed insignificant compared to what else she was losing: her marriage, her dignity, and the last connection she had to the woman who had saved her from the foster system. The dress wasn't just fabric and beading. It was hope. It was the belief that broken things could be made beautiful again. It was the promise that love could last forever. Now it was a costume for someone else's performance, modeled by a stranger who thought betrayal was content. Sophia stood on the sidewalk outside the investment firm, watching New York City rush past her in a blur of yellow cabs and hurried pedestrians. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, each one another nail in the coffin of her carefully constructed life. She had spent years building walls around her heart, protecting herself from the kind of abandonment that had defined her childhood. Marcus had been the first person she trusted enough to let inside. He had promised her safety, stability, a future where she would never be alone again. But promises, she was learning, were just words, and words could be broken as easily as hearts. The woman in the video had tagged her location. She was in Sophia's home, wearing Sophia's dress, sleeping in Sophia's bed, and somewhere in that same house, Marcus was probably watching the chaos unfold, saying nothing, doing nothing to protect the woman he had vowed to cherish. Sophia closed her eyes and made a decision. She was going home to confront the people who had betrayed her. She had no idea that this was only the beginning of her nightmare. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt eternal. Sophia lived in one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings, the kind of place where celebrities and tech moguls paid $20,000 a month for privacy and prestige. The doorman, Roberto, had given her a sympathetic look when she walked through the lobby. Even he had seen the video. Her hands shook as she slid the key card into the lock. The penthouse was eerily quiet, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Central Park. Everything looked exactly as she had left it that morning. The fresh orchids on the dining table, the Wall Street Journal folded next to Marcus's coffee cup, the framed photo of their wedding day smiling at her from the mantelpiece. "Marcus," she called out, her voice echoing in the empty space. No answer. She walked through the living room, past the Italian leather furniture and abstract paintings that had cost more than most people's cars. The silence felt oppressive, like the calm before a storm. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she headed toward the master bedroom. The door was closed. She pressed her ear against the wood and heard nothing. Slowly, she turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was empty, but evidence of the betrayal was everywhere. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled and twisted. Her wedding dress hung in the open closet, returned to its place as if nothing had happened. But Sophia could smell perfume in the air, something floral and cloying that made her stomach turn. On the nightstand, she found a business card. Riley Chen, content creator, making your brand unforgettable. The card was pink with glittery edges, the kind of thing a teenager might design. Sophia's phone rang, making her jump. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Where are you?" she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. "Sophia, baby, I can explain everything." His voice was strained, guilty. "I'm at the office, but I can come home right now. We need to talk. Is she there with you?" A pause. "Who?" "Don't lie to me, Marcus. I saw the video. The whole world saw the video. Look, it's not what you think. Riley is just a friend. She was helping me plan a surprise for you, and she needed something formal to wear to this event. And..." Sophia hung up. She had heard enough lies for one day. She walked to her laptop and opened TikTok, forcing herself to watch the video again. Riley Chen was beautiful in the way that only 26-year-olds could be, with perfect skin and bright eyes and the kind of confidence that came from never knowing real hardship. She moved through Sophia's bedroom like she owned it, touching Sophia's jewelry, sitting on Sophia's bed, claiming Sophia's life. The comments were even worse than the video itself. Thousands of strangers weighing in on her marriage, her appearance, her worth as a woman. "Imagine being so boring your husband's side chick wears your clothes better. Poor little rich girl can't keep her man. Guess money can't buy loyalty." Each comment was a small knife, cutting deeper than the last. Sophia had spent her entire adult life trying to prove she was worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of the success she had built from nothing. Now millions of people were deciding she was worth nothing at all. She scrolled through Riley's other videos and discovered a carefully curated fantasy: designer handbags that Sophia recognized from her own collection, jewelry that Marcus had given her for anniversaries and birthdays, photos taken in restaurants where she and Marcus had shared intimate dinners, now recontextualized as romantic dates with his mistress. How long had this been going on? How many lies had Marcus told? How many times had he kissed Sophia goodbye in the morning, then spent the day with another woman wearing Sophia's clothes and jewelry? The front door slammed shut, and she heard Marcus calling her name. His footsteps were heavy and urgent as he climbed the stairs to their bedroom. "Sophia, thank God you're here. We need to talk about this rationally." She turned to face him. This man she had trusted with her heart and her future. Marcus Sterling was handsome in an old money way, with sandy hair and blue eyes and the kind of patrician features that opened doors in certain circles. His family had been in banking for 4 generations, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. "Rationally," Sophia repeated. "You want to discuss this rationally?" "Yes, I know how this looks, but you have to understand, Riley doesn't mean anything to me. She's just a kid who got carried away with social media. I never meant for this to happen." "You never meant for what to happen? For her to wear my wedding dress? For her to mock me in front of 15 million people? Or for me to find out about your affair?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had once found endearing. "It's not an affair. It's complicated, but it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me. Make me understand how your complicated situation ended up with another woman in my wedding dress." But even as she asked the question, Sophia realized she didn't want to hear his explanation. She had seen enough evidence, heard enough lies. The man standing in front of her was a stranger, someone who had been wearing a mask for months or maybe years. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the dawning realization that she had never really known him at all. By the time Marcus finished his stammering explanation about friendship and misunderstandings, Sophia's phone had received over 3,000 notifications. The video had jumped from 15 million to 25 million views in just 2 hours. News outlets were picking up the story. Her private humiliation was becoming public entertainment. "Sophia, you have to believe me," Marcus pleaded, reaching for her hands. "Riley is nothing to me. She's obsessed, delusional. I've been trying to let her down easy because she works in our building." Sophia pulled away from his touch. "She works in our building? You mean she has a job, unlike what I assumed from her TikTok career. She's in marketing at Blackstone Financial. We've run into each other a few times at business events. She started following me around, making up stories about us. This video is her fantasy, not reality." For a moment, Sophia wanted to believe him. It would be so much easier to blame everything on a delusional girl with too many followers and too little sense. But the evidence didn't support his story. "Marcus, she's wearing my jewelry. She knows where you keep your coffee. She filmed this in our bedroom while I was at the most important meeting of my career. I can explain all of that. Then explain how she got past building security. Explain how she knew the alarm code. Explain why she has a key to our home." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Sophia's laptop chimed with a new notification. Another video from Riley Chen had just been posted. This one was titled "Behind the Scenes When Reality Hits Different." Against her better judgment, Sophia clicked play. Riley appeared on screen in Sophia's white silk robe, sitting on the edge of the bed they had just vacated. Her makeup was perfect, her smile predatory. "Hey, beautiful humans," Riley chirped, her voice artificially sweet. "So I know you're all obsessed with my last video, and honestly, I get it. The dress is gorgeous, right? But some of you are asking questions, and Mama didn't raise no liar. So let me tell you what's really happening." The camera panned across the bedroom, lingering on personal photos and intimate details. "See, some women are so focused on their careers that they forget to focus on their men. And when you neglect your husband, well..." Riley shrugged prettily. "Nature abhors a vacuum. You know Marcus needed someone who could appreciate him, someone who understood that success isn't just about money." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. Riley knew Marcus's name. She spoke about him with casual familiarity, as if their relationship was common knowledge. "Now, I'm not saying I'm trying to steal anyone's husband," Riley continued, examining her manicured nails. "I'm just saying that when a man is lonely, when he's married to someone who cares more about board meetings than bedroom meetings, well, opportunities present themselves." The video cut to Riley opening Sophia's jewelry box, trying on pieces that had been anniversary gifts and birthday surprises. "I mean, look at this collection. Absolutely stunning. But what's the point of having beautiful things if you never have time to enjoy them? If you're always traveling for work or staying late at the office, some women are just too busy being bosses to remember how to be wives." Each word felt like a physical blow. Riley was painting Sophia as a cold, ambitious woman who deserved what was happening to her. The comments section was already filling up with agreement. "She's not wrong, though. Career women always think they can have it all. Marcus deserves better than a workaholic wife." But the worst was yet to come. As the video continued, Riley pulled out her phone and played an audio recording. Marcus's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "She's impossible to live with. Riley, everything is about the next deal, the next presentation. We haven't had a real conversation in months. I feel like I'm married to a robot." Sophia looked at Marcus, who had gone pale. "When did you record that?" "I didn't know she was recording," he whispered. "We were just talking about how impossible I am to live with." The audio continued, Marcus's voice growing more intimate, more cruel. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd married someone normal. Someone who actually wanted to be a wife instead of treating marriage like another business acquisition." Riley's voice responded on the recording, soft and sympathetic. "You deserve to be happy. Marcus, you deserve someone who puts you first. I know. I just don't know how to get out of this situation without destroying everything I've built." The video ended with Riley blowing a kiss at the camera. "Anyway, that's the tea. Angels, sometimes the truth hurts, but it's better than living a lie. Don't forget to follow me for more real talk about real relationships." Sophia closed the laptop with shaking hands. The room spun around her as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or a misunderstanding. This was a calculated campaign to destroy her marriage and her reputation. Marcus was saying something, making excuses, but his words sounded like they were coming from underwater. All Sophia could think about was the audio recording, his voice casually dismissing their entire relationship as a mistake. She had given up so much for this marriage. She had softened her edges, compromised her ambitions, tried to be the kind of wife she thought he wanted. And the whole time, he had been complaining about her to another woman, describing her as impossible, robotic, unworthy of love. "Sophia, please, let me explain." She looked at him with new eyes, seeing clearly for the first time in years. "There's nothing to explain." Marcus, I heard exactly what you think of me. I was frustrated. I said things I didn't mean. No, Sophia said quietly. You said things you did mean. You just didn't think I would ever hear them. She stood up and walked toward the door, her legs unsteady, but her resolve growing stronger with each step. Where are you going? Away from you. Sophia, don't be dramatic. We can work through this. She turned back to face him one last time. I'm not being dramatic. Marcus, I'm being smart. Finally. As she walked out of the bedroom, out of the penthouse, out of the life she had built with a man who had never truly valued her, Sophia realized that the worst was probably yet to come, but for the first time in years, she was ready to face whatever came next on her own terms. 3 days after the viral videos destroyed her marriage, Sophia was hiding in a suite at the St. Regis Hotel when her lawyer called with news that defied belief. They're doing what? She asked, certain she had misheard. Jonathan Pierce cleared his throat nervously. Jonathan had been handling her legal affairs for 5 years, ever since her first tech startup had been acquired by Google. He was usually unflappable, but today his voice shook with outrage. Whitmore Auction House has announced a special event for next Friday night. They're calling it the Modern Love Triangle Collection. Your wedding dress is the centerpiece. Sophia sank into the hotel room's plush armchair, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. That's impossible. The dress is my property. Technically, it's not. I've reviewed your prenuptial agreement and the property distribution clauses. Any gifts given during the marriage, including the wedding dress, revert to community property status. Marcus has legal authority to dispose of them as he sees fit. He's selling my wedding dress, the dress I wore to marry him. It gets worse. Sophia, the auction listing describes it as worn by both wife and mistress, representing the modern complexity of love and loyalty. They're marketing it as a piece of performance art. The phone slipped from Sophia's fingers and clattered to the floor. She stared at the wall, trying to process what she had just heard. Her most intimate possession, the symbol of her hopes and dreams, was being sold as entertainment for wealthy collectors who wanted to own a piece of someone else's pain. She retrieved the phone with shaking hands. What's the estimated value? They're starting the bidding at $100,000. Based on the media attention, they expect it to sell for significantly more. And I get nothing. Nothing. Marcus has already signed the consignment papers. I'm sorry. Sophia, I know how this must feel. But Jonathan had no idea how this felt. He had never been abandoned as a child, never learned that love could disappear without warning, never built his entire sense of security around objects and promises that could be taken away at any moment. The dress represented everything Sophia had lost as a child and thought she had found as an adult. Safety, belonging, the belief that someone would choose her and keep choosing her no matter what. Now it was a commodity, a conversation piece for people who collected scandal like other people collected art. After she hung up with Jonathan, Sophia opened her laptop and navigated to the Whitmore Auction House website. The listing was already live, complete with professional photographs that made her stomach turn. There was her dress, displayed on a mannequin in a pristine white room. The silk caught the light exactly as it had on her wedding day, the intricate beadwork sparkling like captured starlight. But now it was labeled with a clinical description that reduced her entire marriage to a few lines of text. Vera Wang original wedding gown, worn by Mrs. Sophia Sterling on June 15th, 2021, and subsequently by social media influencer Riley Chen in her viral TikTok video that has garnered over 50 million views. This unique piece represents the intersection of traditional matrimony and modern infidelity, making it a singular artifact of contemporary culture. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. They were selling her heartbreak, packaging her humiliation for the highest bidder. The comments section below the listing was already filling up with speculation and cruel jokes. I wonder if it comes with the divorce papers. Perfect conversation piece for the woman who has everything except a faithful husband. Starting my savings account now. This is going to be legendary. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey girl, saw the auction listing. No hard feelings. Right, business is business. XOXO, Riley. The casual cruelty of it took her breath away. Riley wasn't content with destroying Sophia's marriage. She wanted to make sure Sophia knew that she was enjoying every moment of the destruction. Another text followed immediately. BTW, Marcus says hi. He's helping me move into a new apartment downtown. Amazing what divorce proceedings can accomplish. Right? Thanks for making it so easy. Sophia threw her phone across the room, watching it shatter against the hotel wall. The screen went black, but the words continued to echo in her mind. Marcus was already moving on, already setting up a new life with the woman who had systematically dismantled the old one. She walked to the window and looked out at Central Park, where couples strolled hand in hand and families played in the autumn sunshine. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their private moments could become public entertainment at any moment. For 3 days, she had been telling herself that she could survive this. She was strong, successful, independent. She had overcome worse things than a cheating husband and a viral video. But the auction listing changed everything. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about power, about reducing her to an object that could be bought and sold. It was about taking the most vulnerable part of her heart and putting it on display for strangers to bid on. She thought about her foster mother, the only person who had ever loved her unconditionally. Margaret had saved for months to buy the fabric for that dress, had sewn every bead by hand because she wanted Sophia to feel beautiful on her wedding day. Every girl deserves to feel like a princess, Margaret had said, her fingers working carefully through the delicate silk. Even girls like us. Girls like us. Foster kids, throwaways, children who had learned not to expect too much from life. Margaret had taught Sophia to dream bigger, to believe she deserved love and happiness and beautiful things. Now that dress, that symbol of hope and possibility, was going to hang in some stranger's closet. Or worse, it would be displayed in a glass case like a museum exhibit, a reminder that love was temporary but humiliation was forever. Sophia sank to the floor and finally allowed herself to cry. Not the careful, controlled tears she had been holding back, but the deep, body-shaking sobs of someone whose world had completely collapsed. She cried for the girl who had believed in fairy tales, for the woman who had thought she had found her happy ending, and for the future that had just been auctioned off to the highest bidder. Sophia hadn't eaten in 2 days when Jackson Hayes appeared at her hotel room door with coffee and croissants from her favorite bakery. Jackson was her business partner, the co-founder of their AI startup, and one of the few people she trusted completely. He was also one of the smartest men she had ever met, with the kind of analytical mind that could find patterns where others saw only chaos. "You look terrible," he said, settling into the chair across from her unmade bed. "Thank you for that astute observation. I'm serious. Sophia, when was the last time you showered or changed clothes?" She looked down at the wrinkled dress she had been wearing for 3 days. "I've been busy wallowing in self-pity. It's surprisingly time-consuming." Jackson opened his laptop and pulled up a series of documents. "I've been investigating Riley Chen and Marcus's family. I think you need to see what I found. Jackson, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I just want to disappear. Maybe move to a small town in Montana where no one has internet access. Look at this, he insisted, turning the screen toward her. Riley Chen isn't who she claims to be. Despite herself, Sophia leaned forward. The screen showed a detailed financial analysis, the kind of deep dive that Jackson specialized in. Her social media presence exploded overnight 6 months ago. Before that, she had maybe 5,000 followers and posted makeup tutorials. Then suddenly, she's getting millions of views and brand partnerships worth 6 figures. Maybe she got lucky. Maybe one of her videos went viral. No, this is different. Look at the engagement patterns. Most of her followers are bot accounts, purchased in bulk from click farms in Eastern Europe. Her comments are generated by AI software. Someone paid a lot of money to manufacture her influence. Sophia felt a spark of interest for the first time in days. Who would do that? That's where it gets interesting. Jackson clicked to another tab. The payments for her follower purchases came from a shell company called Sterling Investments LLC. Sterling like Marcus Sterling. Exactly like Marcus Sterling. The company was incorporated 2 years ago, shortly after you signed your prenuptial agreement. The sole director is listed as Diane Sterling. Sophia's blood ran cold. Diane Sterling was Marcus's mother, a formidable woman who had never approved of her son's marriage to a common foster child. Diane came from old East Coast money, the kind of family that traced their lineage back to the Mayflower and considered new money vulgar. You think Diane paid to make Riley famous? I think Diane orchestrated this entire thing. Look at the timeline. Riley's first viral video was about dating wealthy men. Her second was about recognizing when you're not good enough for someone's family. Her third was specifically about tech entrepreneurs who prioritize work over relationships. The pieces began falling into place in Sophia's mind. She was building a narrative. Exactly. Creating content that would appeal to Marcus, that would make him feel justified in his dissatisfaction with your marriage. And it worked. I found credit card records showing that Marcus started following her account 8 months ago. He's been liking and commenting on her videos, sending her private messages. How did you get his credit card records? Jackson smiled grimly. You gave me access to your joint accounts for business expenses. Remember, I may have interpreted that authorization somewhat broadly. That's probably illegal. Definitely illegal, but effective. Sophia stood up and paced to the window, her mind racing. So you're saying this wasn't a random affair? You're saying it was planned? I'm saying someone wanted to destroy your marriage, and they used Riley as a weapon to do it. The question is why? But Sophia already knew why. She had been asking herself the same question for months. Ever since Diane had started making pointed comments about Marcus's future and the importance of family legacy. The prenup, she said quietly. What about it? There's a clause that requires me to forfeit my shares in the company if I'm found to be in violation of my matrimonial duties. It was Diane's idea. Something about protecting the family's interests. Jackson's expression darkened. What constitutes a violation? Adultery, abandonment, or bringing public shame to the Sterling name. Public shame, like having your private life become a viral sensation. Exactly like that. Jackson typed rapidly, pulling up more documents. Sophia, your company shares are worth approximately $80 million. If you forfeit them due to the prenup clause, they revert to Marcus, and according to the family trust documents, Marcus's assets automatically transfer to his mother's control if his marriage ends in scandal. The room seemed to tilt around her. Are you saying Diane planned all of this to steal my company? I'm saying she had motive, means, and opportunity. She created Riley's online presence, introduced her to Marcus through carefully orchestrated encounters, and then sat back while human nature took its course. But Marcus chose to have the affair. No one forced him to betray me. No, but they made it as easy as possible. Think about it. Sophia. Riley is young, beautiful, and supposedly successful. She was custom designed to appeal to Marcus's ego and insecurities. Diane knows her son better than anyone. She knew exactly what kind of woman would turn his head. Sophia sank back into her chair, overwhelmed by the scope of the conspiracy. So Riley is just an actress. A very well-paid actress. I found evidence of monthly payments from the Sterling family trust, always just under the amount that would require reporting to the IRS. And the wedding dress auction. The perfect finale. Public humiliation so complete that you'll never be able to claim the scandal was manufactured. Even if you prove the affair was orchestrated, who's going to believe you didn't deserve it after seeing your most intimate possession sold to strangers? The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Diane hadn't just wanted to end Sophia's marriage. She had wanted to destroy her completely, to ensure that she would never recover financially or emotionally from the experience. Jackson, if you're right about this, if you can prove it, we can destroy them all. Fraud, conspiracy, emotional distress. We can take them for everything they're worth. For the first time in days, Sophia felt something other than despair. It was rage, pure and clean and focused. These people had tried to break her, to reduce her to nothing more than a cautionary tale about women who reached too high. They had no idea who they were dealing with. How long do we have until the auction? 48 hours. Then we better get to work. Sophia spent the next 24 hours in Jackson's downtown office, surrounded by laptops, legal documents, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. They worked through the night, building their case piece by piece, following digital breadcrumbs that led deeper and deeper into the Sterling family's web of deception. By dawn, they had assembled a devastating collection of evidence: bank transfers, email communications, even recorded phone calls between Diane and Riley discussing the operation. Jackson's computer skills bordered on the supernatural, and his willingness to bend legal boundaries had given them access to information that would have taken months to obtain through proper channels. "We have enough to bury them," Jackson said, rubbing his exhausted eyes. "The conspiracy charges alone will send Diane to prison." Sophia was reviewing the auction house documents when she noticed something strange. "Jackson, look at this. The consignment agreement for my dress was signed by someone named D. Sterling, not Marcus Sterling. Diane signed it herself. That's fraud." "No, it's worse than that." Sophia pulled up the prenuptial agreement on her laptop. "According to this clause, Marcus doesn't have the authority to dispose of my personal property until the divorce is finalized and the assets are redistributed. The dress sale is completely illegal." Jackson leaned over her shoulder to read the document. "So we can stop the auction. We can do better than that. We can use it to prove that the entire scheme was planned in advance. Diane signed those papers 3 days ago, before Marcus had even filed for divorce. She was so confident in her plan that she jumped the gun." They were interrupted by a knock on the office door. Sophia looked up to see Alex Rivera, the investigative journalist who had been trying to interview her since the scandal broke. Alex was young, ambitious, and had a reputation for exposing corruption in New York's elite circles. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have information about the Sterling case that I think you need to hear." Jackson glanced at Sophia, who nodded. They needed all the help they could get. Alex entered the office carrying a thick manila folder. "I've been investigating Diane Sterling for months as part of a series about old money families and their influence on New York politics. What happened to Mrs. Sterling fits a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" Sophia asked. Diane has been systematically destroying women who threaten her family's legacy for over 20 years. Marcus's first girlfriend in college, the woman he almost proposed to before you, 2 different board members who questioned her decisions. They all ended up publicly humiliated, financially ruined, or both. Alex opened the folder and spread photographs across Jackson's desk. Sarah Mitchell, Marcus's college girlfriend. She was going to expose the Sterling family's tax evasion schemes until compromising photos of her were leaked to the press. She lost her job, her reputation, everything. Sophia picked up one of the photographs. The woman looked young and vulnerable, caught in what was clearly a private moment that was never meant to be seen by strangers. Jennifer Walsh, a board member who discovered that the Sterling Family Trust was being used for illegal campaign contributions. She died in a car accident 2 days before she was supposed to testify to the SEC. "You think Diane killed her?" Jackson asked. "I think Diane is capable of anything to protect her interests. And I think Mrs. Sterling was always meant to be a temporary marriage, just long enough to gain access to her company and her assets." Sophia felt sick. "You're saying Marcus never loved me at all. I'm saying love had nothing to do with it. The Sterling family was facing bankruptcy 3 years ago. Their investments had gone bad, their trust fund was depleted, and they needed a massive influx of cash to maintain their lifestyle. Your company was worth exactly what they needed. But they could have just asked me to invest. I would have helped them." Alex shook his head. "Not asked, taken. Diane doesn't believe in partnerships, especially not with women she considers beneath her social status. She wanted complete control of your assets, and marriage was the easiest way to get it." The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, creating a picture so ugly that Sophia could barely look at it. Her entire marriage had been a lie, a carefully planned acquisition disguised as romance. "There's more," Alex continued. "I have evidence that Riley isn't the only woman Diane hired. There have been others. Young women paid to seduce men whose wives had something Diane wanted. It's like a cottage industry for her." Jackson was typing furiously, cross-referencing the information with his own research. "Sophia, this changes everything. If we can prove that your marriage was entered into under false pretenses, we can void the prenuptial agreement entirely. Which means I keep my company shares. All of them, plus damages for fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy." For a moment, Sophia allowed herself to feel hopeful. They had the evidence they needed to destroy Diane's plan and reclaim her life. But the feeling was short-lived. Her phone, hastily replaced after she had thrown the previous one against the wall, buzzed with a new message. The number was blocked, but the content made her blood freeze. "Enjoying your little investigation? Too bad it won't matter. By tomorrow night, you'll have nothing left to fight for. Sleep tight. A friend." "Jackson, someone knows what we're doing." He looked up from his computer, concerned. "What do you mean?" She showed him the message. His face went pale as he read it. "We need to move faster. If they know we're investigating, they'll try to accelerate their timeline. Or they'll try to stop us permanently," Alex added grimly. As if on cue, Jackson's computer screen went black. Then Sophia's laptop died. One by one, every electronic device in the office shut down, leaving them sitting in silence and darkness. "Someone just killed our power," Jackson said quietly. Through the office window, Sophia could see that the rest of the building still had electricity, only their floor had gone dark. "They're not just trying to stop us," she realized. "They're sending a message." The message was clear: Diane Sterling would do whatever it took to protect her interests. And if that meant destroying the people who threatened her, She was more than capable of doing so. Sophia looked at Jackson and Alex, these two people who had risked everything to help her, and felt a crushing weight of responsibility. By involving them in her fight, she had put their lives in danger, but backing down wasn't an option. Too much had been stolen from her already. Her marriage, her dignity, her sense of safety in the world. She wouldn't let them take her company too. "We continue," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes, we finish this." Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, unaware that a war was being fought in the shadows. A war that would determine not just Sophia's future, but whether justice was possible in a world where money and power could buy anything, including other people's lives. The morning of the auction, Sophia discovered that betrayal could still surprise her, even after everything she had been through. She was in Jackson's backup office, a small space he rented under a false name for situations exactly like this, when she found him on the phone with someone he clearly didn't want her to overhear. "No, the timeline hasn't changed," he was saying in a low voice. "Everything proceeds as planned. She suspects nothing." Sophia froze in the doorway, her arms full of coffee and pastries she had brought for their final strategy session. The man she had trusted with her life, her company, and her desperate plan for revenge was talking about her like she was an object to be manipulated. Jackson hadn't noticed her yet. He was facing the window, his back to the door, speaking with the casual confidence of someone who believed he was completely safe. "The auction starts at 8 tonight. By 9, she'll be completely destroyed, financially and emotionally. Diane's plan was brilliant, I have to admit." The coffee cup slipped from Sophia's hands and crashed to the floor. Jackson spun around, his face cycling through surprise, guilt, and resignation. "Sophia, I can explain." "How long?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "How long have you been working with them?" Jackson closed his phone and sat down heavily in his chair. "Since the beginning. Since before your marriage." The words hit her like physical blows. "My business partner. My friend. The person who helped me build everything I have. It wasn't supposed to go this far. The original plan was much simpler. Marcus would marry you, gain access to your assets, and then we would manufacture a quiet divorce. You would have kept enough to live comfortably, just not enough to threaten anyone. But I fought back. You always fight back. That's the problem. Diane underestimated your resilience, your refusal to accept defeat. When the simple plan didn't work, she had to escalate." Sophia laughed, a sound that held no humor whatsoever. "And you helped her every step of the way." "I helped her contain the damage. Do you think it was an accident that you discovered the conspiracy? Do you think your investigation was successful because of your superior detective skills?" The room tilted around her as she understood what he was saying. "You wanted me to find the evidence against Diane." "I needed you to find it, because Diane had become a liability. Her methods were too crude, too public. The viral videos, the auction, the death threats. She was drawing attention to operations that were supposed to remain invisible. So you used me to destroy her. I used you to solve a problem. Diane's exposure means the end of her influence, her network, her ability to threaten people like us. You should be thanking me." Sophia stared at this man she had known for 5 years, had trusted with her secrets and her dreams, and realized she was looking at a complete stranger. People like us, successful people, people who built something from nothing and refused to let old money families destroy it for sport. Do you think you're the only tech entrepreneur Diane has targeted? Do you think she won't move on to the next self-made woman who threatens her worldview? So this was all for the greater good, Jackson smiled. And for the first time, Sophia saw the coldness that had always been hiding behind his friendly facade. This was all for survival. Your company, our company, was going to be absorbed by the Sterling family trust whether you cooperated or not. At least this way, you get to take Diane down with you. Our company. The words came out as a whisper. I've been buying up shares through shell corporations for 2 years. Sophia, silent partners, investor groups, holding companies. I currently own 51% of everything you think belongs to you. The final betrayal was almost anticlimactic after everything else. Of course, Jackson had been stealing from her. Of course, the man she had trusted most had been planning her destruction longest. Why tell me this now? Why not just let me walk into the auction believing you were on my side? Because I want you to understand that this isn't personal. It's business. And because I'm giving you a choice. What choice? Walk away now, tonight. Take the money I'm prepared to offer you and disappear. Start over somewhere else, under a different name if necessary. You're smart, talented, resourceful. You can build another company, another life. And if I refuse, then you stay for the auction, and you watch your wedding dress get sold to the highest bidder. You watch the media dissect every detail of your failed marriage. You watch your reputation get destroyed so completely that you'll never work in tech again. Sophia walked to the window and looked out at the city she had conquered once and lost twice. How much are you offering? $5 million. More than enough to start over. For a company worth $80 million. For a company that will be worth nothing once tonight's auction becomes international news. No investor will touch you after this. Sophia, no board will hire you. The scandal will follow you forever. She turned back to face him. This man who had helped her build her dreams and then sold them to the highest bidder. You know what the funny thing is, Jackson? What? I actually thought someone cared about me. When you showed up with coffee and croissants, when you worked all night to help me find evidence, when you promised we would destroy them together, I thought, finally, someone is on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm offering you an exit. No, you're on your own side. You always have been. Sophia walked toward the door. Her decision made. Keep your $5 million. Jackson, I'd rather have nothing than owe anything to people like you. Sophia, don't be stupid. Take the money and run. It's your only chance. She paused in the doorway and looked back at him one last time. You know what you never understood about me. I'd rather lose everything fighting than win anything by surrendering. You're going to regret this. Maybe. But at least I'll regret it as myself, not as someone else's puppet. She walked out of Jackson's office and into the afternoon sunshine, completely alone for the first time in her adult life. No husband, no business partner, no allies, no safety net. Just herself and the burning determination to make sure that if she was going down, she wouldn't go down quietly. The auction was in 4 hours. She had no plan, no resources, and no hope of victory. But she had something else. Something that none of her betrayers could understand or take away. She had nothing left to lose. The Whitmore auction house buzzed with an energy that felt more like a gladiatorial arena than a refined cultural institution. Sophia stood across the street, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as New York's elite gathered to bid on her humiliation. She recognized faces from magazine covers, society pages, and business journals, people who collected art, antiques, and apparently other people's broken dreams. She had spent the afternoon in Central Park, sitting on a bench and watching normal people live normal lives, couples holding hands, families playing with children, dog walkers and joggers and street musicians who had no idea that someone's entire world was about to be auctioned off for entertainment. Now, as evening shadows lengthened across Fifth Avenue, Sophia made her way toward the auction house. She wasn't entirely sure why she was going. She had no money to bid with, no plan to stop what was about to happen, no allies to support her. But she needed to see it happen. She needed to witness the moment when the last piece of her old life was sold to strangers. The auction house lobby was crowded with beautifully dressed people holding champagne glasses and speaking in the hushed tones that wealth required. Sophia recognized the type immediately. These were her former peers, the kind of people who attended charity galas and museum openings, who donated money to causes they didn't really understand and bought art they didn't really appreciate. Mrs. Sterling. A young woman with a clipboard approached her nervously. "I'm Jennifer from Whitmore's events team. We weren't expecting you tonight. I wanted to see my dress one last time before someone else owns it." Jennifer glanced around uncomfortably. "Of course. The viewing area is just through those doors. The auction begins in 30 minutes. Sophia walked into the main gallery, where her wedding dress was displayed under spotlights like a museum piece. A small crowd had gathered around it, pointing and whispering and taking photos with their phones. She heard fragments of conversation that made her stomach turn. Can you imagine having your private life become such a spectacle? Well, she must have done something to drive him away. I heard she's completely broke now. Serves her right for being so ambitious. Near the dress, a placard provided context for potential bidders. This Vera Wang original represents a unique moment in contemporary culture, when private betrayal became public entertainment, worn first by Mrs. Sophia Sterling on her wedding day, and subsequently by social media influencer Riley Chen in a viral video that garnered over 60 million views. This garment embodies the modern intersection of love, infidelity, and digital media. Sophia stared at the placard, reading her own heartbreak reduced to marketing copy. They had turned her marriage into an art exhibition, her pain into a collector's item. Sophia? She turned to see Alex Rivera approaching with a concerned expression. The journalist looked as exhausted as Sophia felt, dark circles under her eyes and stress lines around her mouth. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "I've been trying to reach you all day. After what happened with Jackson, I was worried about you." "You know about Jackson." "I know he's been working with the Sterling family from the beginning. I also know that Diane Sterling is here tonight, along with Marcus and Riley. They're planning something bigger than just the auction." Sophia looked around the gallery until she spotted them near the back of the room. Diane Sterling was holding court with a group of society matrons, her silver hair perfectly styled and her expression serene. She looked like someone's elegant grandmother, not a woman who destroyed lives for profit. Marcus stood beside his mother, uncomfortable in his expensive suit. He kept glancing toward the dress, then looking away as if it pained him to see it. Riley was taking selfies with the auction catalog, posing as if she were attending a red carpet premiere instead of the sale of someone else's most precious possession. "What are they planning?" Sophia asked. "I'm not entirely sure, but I overheard a conversation between Diane and the auction house director. They're expecting someone specific to bid tonight, someone who will ensure the dress goes where Diane wants it to go." "Where does she want it to go?" "To a private collector who specializes in what he calls feminine failure artifacts. Wedding dresses from divorced celebrities, engagement rings from broken relationships, love letters from affairs that ended in suicide. He turns women's pain into trophy collections for wealthy men who enjoy owning other people's misery." Sophia felt nauseated. It wasn't enough for Diane to destroy her marriage and steal her company. She wanted to ensure that Sophia's humiliation would be preserved forever, displayed in some sick man's private museum as a reminder that women who reached too high would always fall. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer's voice echoed through the gallery. "Please take your seats. We're about to begin tonight's special auction." The crowd moved toward the seating area, but Sophia remained frozen in place. She couldn't bring herself to sit down and watch her life be sold piece by piece, but she also couldn't leave. Some stubborn part of her insisted on witnessing every moment of her destruction. "Sophia," Alex said gently, "you don't have to stay for this." "Yes, I do. If I run now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what happened. I need to see it through to the end." They found seats in the back row, far from the cameras and reporters who were documenting the event for tomorrow's headlines. Sophia pulled out her phone and opened the live stream, where comments were already flowing like a digital waterfall. "This is so sad, but I can't look away. Team Riley all the way. She's living her best life. Poor Sophia. Imagine having your wedding dress auctioned off. She probably deserved it for being such a workaholic wife." The auctioneer, a distinguished man in his 60s, stepped up to the podium with practiced showmanship. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what promises to be a truly historic auction. Tonight we offer not just beautiful objects, but pieces of living history. Artifacts that capture the complexity of human emotion and modern relationships." He gestured toward the dress, which rotated slowly on its display stand like a piece of fine jewelry. "We begin with Lot 17, the Vera Wang wedding gown worn by Mrs. Sophia Sterling and featured in the viral social media phenomenon that has captivated millions worldwide. The bidding opened at $100,000 and immediately jumped to $150,000. Sophia watched the numbers climb, each bid another nail in the coffin of her old life. 200,000, 250,000, 300,000. She recognized some of the bidders. A socialite who collected scandal like other people collected shoes. A tech entrepreneur who had always resented Sophia's success. A hedge fund manager whose wife had left him for someone younger and richer. At $400,000, a new bidder entered the competition, an older man sitting in the front row, bidding with calm confidence that suggested money was no object. Alex leaned over and whispered, "That's him, the collector Diane was talking about." The price continued to climb. 500,000, 600,000, 700,000. The other bidders began dropping out, unable or unwilling to compete with the mysterious collector. At $800,000, the gallery fell silent except for the auctioneer's voice. "Do I hear 850,000? The collector raised his paddle without hesitation. 850,000. "Do I hear 900,000? Silence. Going once at $850,000. Sophia closed her eyes, preparing for the final blow. Going twice. $1 million. Every head in the gallery turned toward the back of the room, where a woman had stood up and raised her paddle high in the air. It took Sophia a moment to realize that the woman was herself. The gallery erupted in surprised murmurs and camera flashes as Sophia stood with her paddle raised, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She had no idea where the words had come from, no plan for what would happen next. She only knew that she couldn't let her wedding dress become a trophy in some stranger's collection of feminine misery. "Ma'am," the auctioneer said, clearly flustered, "I need to verify your bidding credentials." "Sophia Sterling," she called out, her voice carrying across the silent gallery. "I'm bidding on my own wedding dress." The crowd's murmur turned into excited chatter. This was better than anyone had expected. The wronged wife, bidding against strangers for the right to own her own heartbreak. Diane Sterling's face had gone pale. This wasn't part of her plan. The mysterious collector looked annoyed, as if someone had interrupted his private game. Marcus was staring at Sophia with an expression she couldn't read. Mrs. Sterling, the auctioneer continued. Do you have proof of funds for a bid of this magnitude? Sophia's mind raced. She had maybe $5,000 in her personal checking account, money that Marcus hadn't been able to touch because it was from before their marriage. She had no way to cover $1 million bid, no assets that weren't tied up in legal proceedings. But she also had something else. Something that Jackson and Diane and Marcus had forgotten about in their rush to destroy her. Alex, she whispered, I need you to call someone for me. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Margaret Chen, her foster mother's lawyer, the woman who had handled her estate after she died. Mrs. Chen, this is Sophia Sterling. I need to ask you about my mother's life insurance policy. The conversation was brief but illuminating. Margaret had set up a trust fund for Sophia before she died. Money that could only be accessed in cases of extreme financial hardship. The fund contained $2 million, money that Sophia had never known existed. The authorization will take 24 hours to process, Mrs. Chen explained, but I can provide a letter of guarantee immediately. Fax it to Whitmore Auction House, Sophia said. Right now. She hung up and looked at the auctioneer. You'll have verification of funds within 5 minutes. The collector was growing impatient. I bid $1,100,000. $1,500,000. Sophia responded without hesitation. A gasp went through the crowd. This was no longer just an auction. It was a battle. A public confrontation between the woman who had been wronged and the forces that had wronged her. Ma'am, someone called from the middle of the gallery. Why are you bidding on your own dress? Sophia looked out at the sea of faces, at the cameras recording her every word, at the millions of people watching the live stream. This was her moment to tell her story, to reclaim the narrative that had been stolen from her. Because it was never for sale, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room. This dress represents hope, love, and the belief that broken things can be made beautiful again. It was hand-sewn by my foster mother, a woman who saved for months to buy the fabric because she wanted me to feel worthy of love. She gestured toward Diane Sterling. These people tried to turn it into a symbol of failure, a trophy for their cruelty. But it's not their story to sell. It's mine. The fax machine in the auction house office began humming. Within minutes, an assistant brought the verification letter to the auctioneer. Mrs. Sterling's bid of $1,500,000 is confirmed, he announced. The collector raised his paddle again. $2 million. Sophia felt a moment of panic. Even with Margaret's trust fund, she couldn't compete at that level. But then she remembered something else, something that might save her. Before we continue, she said loudly, I'd like the auction house to verify that the consignment of this dress was legal. The auctioneer looked confused. I'm sorry. According to New York state law, personal property cannot be consigned for auction without the owner's consent. I am the legal owner of this dress, and I never consented to its sale. Sophia pulled out her phone and opened the photos that Alex had helped her gather. Furthermore, the consignment agreement was signed by Diane Sterling, who has no legal authority over my personal property. The sale of this dress constitutes theft of personal property and fraud. The gallery buzzed with excitement. This was becoming a legal drama as well as a personal one. Diane Sterling stood up, her composure finally cracking. That dress is community property acquired during the marriage. My son has every right to dispose of it. Actually, Sophia continued, the dress was a gift from my deceased foster mother, given to me before my marriage. It has never been community property, and it cannot be sold without my explicit consent. She looked directly at Diane, meeting the older woman's furious gaze. What you've done here tonight isn't just cruel, it's criminal. The auctioneer was consulting frantically with the auction house's legal team. The crowd was taking photos and videos, documenting every moment of the confrontation. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer finally announced, we need to suspend this auction pending legal review. No, Sophia said firmly. The auction continues, but it continues on my terms. She walked toward the front of the gallery, past the shocked faces and raised phones, until she stood next to her wedding dress. I bid $2 million, she announced, and I'm donating the entire amount to a foundation for women escaping domestic violence, because that's what this dress should represent. Not failure, not shame, but the strength to leave situations that no longer serve you. The gallery erupted in applause. Even some of the society matrons who had come to watch Sophia's humiliation were clapping. The live stream comments turned overwhelmingly positive. This is the most badass thing I've ever seen. Sophia just turned her own auction into a victory lap. Diane Sterling looks like she's about to have a heart attack. The mysterious collector lowered his paddle and left without another word. He had come to buy someone's misery, not to compete with their redemption. Going once at $2 million, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Sold to Mrs. Sophia Sterling for $2 million. The applause was deafening. Sophia walked over to the dress and touched the silk gently, remembering Margaret's hands sewing each bead with love and hope. Thank you, she whispered to the memory of the woman who had saved her life in more ways than one. As the crowd began to disperse, still buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed, Sophia noticed that Diane, Marcus, and Riley had disappeared. They had come to watch her destruction and instead had witnessed her resurrection. Alex appeared at her side, grinning widely. That was incredible. Do you want to give a statement to the press? Sophia looked around the gallery, at the cameras and reporters and curious strangers who had watched her reclaim her own story. I think I've said enough for tonight. But as they walked toward the exit, she felt lighter than she had in months. The dress was coming home with her, where it belonged. The money would help women who needed it most. And the world had seen that she was stronger than the people who had tried to break her. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sophia Sterling felt like herself again. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the conference room of her new company, Sterling Phoenix Technologies, looking out at Central Park through floor-to-ceiling windows. The autumn leaves were turning gold and red, painting the landscape in colors that reminded her of resilience and renewal. The room buzzed with quiet conversation as her team prepared for the presentation that would determine their future. Sterling Phoenix was Sophia's second act, a cybersecurity firm that specialized in protecting individuals and small businesses from the kind of digital manipulation she had experienced firsthand. "Are you ready for this?" asked Sarah Mitchell, Sophia's new business partner and the same woman who had been destroyed by Diane Sterling 20 years earlier. Sarah had reached out after the auction, sharing her own story and offering her expertise in financial forensics. "As ready as I'll ever be," Sophia replied, straightening her jacket. She had chosen to wear navy blue today, a color that conveyed confidence without aggression. The days of trying to soften herself for other people's comfort were over. The investors filed in, a mix of venture capitalists and angel investors who specialized in companies founded by women. Sophia had learned to be selective about who she allowed into her business, prioritizing partners who shared her values over those who simply offered the most money. "Good morning, everyone," Sophia began, her voice steady and clear. "6 months ago, I lost everything I thought mattered: my marriage, my company, my sense of safety in the world. Today, I want to show you how that loss became the foundation for something much more valuable." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation, which showed a simple statistic: 73% of women report experiencing some form of digital harassment or manipulation in romantic relationships. "The technology that was used against me isn't unique. Every day, thousands of women discover that their private photos have been shared without consent. Their social media accounts have been hacked by ex-partners. Their financial information has been accessed by people they trusted." The next slide showed Sterling Phoenix's logo, a bird rising from flames with wings spread wide. "We're not just building software, we're building a shield. A way for people to protect themselves from those who would use technology as a weapon." Sophia moved through her presentation with the confidence of someone who had already survived the worst-case scenario. She showed product demonstrations, market research, and financial projections. But more importantly, she told stories. The story of Maria, a single mother whose ex-husband used spyware to track her location and threaten her children. Sterling Phoenix's software had helped her disappear digitally, creating a safe space where she could rebuild her life. The story of Jennifer, a college student whose intimate photos had been shared by a vindictive ex-boyfriend. Sterling Phoenix had not only helped remove the images from the internet, but had provided legal support to prosecute the perpetrator. The story of Sophia herself, and how the worst thing that had ever happened to her had become the inspiration for helping others. The global market for personal cybersecurity is projected to reach $50 billion by 2025. Sophia concluded, "We're not just capturing market share. We're creating an entirely new category of protection for the most vulnerable users of technology." The questions that followed were thoughtful and engaged. These investors understood that they weren't just funding a tech startup, they were supporting a movement. After the presentation ended and the investors had left to deliberate, Sophia and Sarah sat alone in the conference room, exhausted but optimistic. "I think that went well," Sarah said. "I think it went perfectly." Sophia replied, "Win or lose, we told our story honestly." Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, she felt the old panic, the fear that her enemies had found new ways to torment her. But the message was from Riley Chen. "Saw the news about your company. I wanted you to know that I've been in therapy since the auction. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I hope someday you can forgive me. Riley." Sophia showed the message to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to respond?" "I don't know." Part of me wants to tell her that forgiveness isn't something she can earn with a text message, but part of me remembers that she was a victim too, in her own way. What happened to her after everything came out? She lost all her brand partnerships when the conspiracy was exposed. Turns out that companies don't like working with influencers whose fame was manufactured by criminal organizations. She's working at a nonprofit now, helping other young women avoid the mistakes she made. And Marcus, divorced, disgraced, and working as a junior analyst at a bank in New Jersey. His mother's arrest pretty much ended his career in Manhattan finance. Sarah smiled grimly. "Good. Some people deserve to face consequences for their actions." Sophia's phone rang. The caller ID showed her lawyer's number. "Jonathan, please tell me you have good news." "The best news," her lawyer replied. The jury found Diane Sterling guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison and ordered her to pay restitution of $20 million. Sophia closed her eyes and felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. What about Jackson? He testified against Diane in exchange for a lighter sentence: 3 years minimum security and forfeiture of all assets acquired through the conspiracy. Your original company shares have been returned to you. I don't want them. Donate them to the foundation we set up for the auction proceeds. Sophia, those shares are worth $60 million. And they'll do $60 million worth of good for women who need help escaping situations like mine. After she hung up, Sophia walked to the window and looked out at the city that had tried to destroy her and had instead made her stronger. Somewhere in that maze of glass and steel, other women were facing their own betrayals, their own moments of choice between surrender and resistance. Her wedding dress hung in a place of honor in her apartment, but it no longer represented the naive hope of her younger self. Now it was a reminder that beautiful things could survive ugly treatment, that love was possible even after heartbreak, and that the most powerful response to cruelty was kindness. Her phone buzzed with another notification. This one was from the investment firm. Congratulations, Sophia. We're excited to partner with Sterling Phoenix Technologies. Welcome to the future. Sophia smiled and texted back a simple response. Thank you, but this isn't the future. This is just the beginning. As the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Sophia Sterling stood in her office and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the fragile quiet of someone who was afraid to make noise, but the deep calm of someone who had faced the worst and survived. She had been auctioned, betrayed, humiliated, and broken, but she had also been reborn. And in rising from the ashes of her old life, she had created something beautiful, a company that would protect others from the predators who had once hunted her. The girl from the foster system who had once believed she needed other people's approval to be worthy had finally learned the most important lesson of all. The only validation that mattered was the kind she gave herself. The auction of her shame had become the foundation of her strength. And that, Sophia thought as she gathered her things and prepared to go home, was the best revenge of all. If Sophia's journey inspired you to never give up, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what part hit you the hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear that comeback stories are real. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible tales of resilience and revenge. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most.